Welcome back into the North Star Takes podcast. I'm Bailey Policki. He's Jacob Liberta, and we're a Minnesota sports podcast. So if you're a Minnesota sports fan, please click the like button on this video and subscribe to the channel. And also help spread the word about our Minnesota sports conversations to other Minnesota sports fans. Today we're going to be talking Minnesota Vikings. Season's right around the corner, and specifically we're talking about Kirk Cousins because all of a sudden here, on basically the dawn of the new season here, right before we're getting started, everyone's hyping him up as a MVP candidate. We've seen Michael Irvin picked him as his MVP. Kyle Brandt from Good Morning Football, who's always been a big Kirk guy, he picked Kirk as his MVP. So, I mean, what do you make of this, Liberta? What do you think all this sudden Kirk Cousins MVP hype is all about?
It's really caught me by surprise. I know this week is a week like no other as far as prediction making goes right before the NFL season starts because you kind of know what these teams look like, at least going into the season. So now you can pick all your Super Bowl favorites and who's going to win each division and who's going to win all these different awards by year's end. But then we're getting into MVP talk, and it caught me off guard. The first one I saw was the Michael Irvin one, and I'm like, really? Especially when they put it in a graphic where like a couple of people took Rodgers, and win 3 in a row. A couple people took Josh Allen. Makes sense. Dude's a freak, and the Bills are the odds-on favorite to win the Super Bowl this year. And then you got Joe Burrow in there too, who obviously in his own right, he went to the Super Bowl last year, and he feels like he's got even more to prove, and great continuity in that offense that's returning almost everybody and only getting better in the offensive line. And then all of a sudden, you see Michael Irvin there, Kirk Cousins, and you see that nice, cheesy, corny picture of Kirk right on the right side of that graphic, and it's like, oh my gosh, we're really going there, huh? And then I'm like, okay, I think one person can say this, and it's like, there's probably somebody out there that believes it. But then, then you get Kyle Brandt doubling down on that on Good Morning Football and be like, yes, Kirk is my MVP. This is where basically you have all the makings of a perfect storm for him, from getting the new coaching staff that's like night and day difference as far as offensive philosophy goes and just really competency. And because you think about where we were this time last year, you had Zimmer, who didn't like him to begin with. Like that was the biggest issue. And then he supports him with Gary Kubiak exiting and then bringing in his son to be a first-time play caller. I mean, offensive coordinator at 34 years old, just like no footing about him as far as like experience goes and being ready for that role. So like he was way in over his head, and it held the makings of a bad support system to Kirk. But now you got Kevin O'Connell in there, and even Wes Phillips. I mean, got all these guys that are going to be like assumably a pretty big difference, and that's what these guys like Michael Irvin and Kyle Brandt are banking on. I think that's the biggest thing is the coaching staff. But yeah, still, nonetheless, I'm pretty surprised to see the national media get on a pedestal and be like, yes, and beat their chest and be like, yes, Kirk Cousins was winning the MVP this year. Because I definitely wouldn't go that far, but I kind of figured some people, at least in the local media, would, but to see it nationally is kind of eyebrow raising a little bit. What do you think, Bailey?
Yeah, I think nationally, usually Kirk Cousins gets shredded quite a bit. He's kind of the punching bag, especially ever since like Tony Romo's retired. Romo kind of handed that.
We see him too.
Yeah, exactly. Like he's very similar to Tony Romo's. Tons of skill. He can put up the stats. He can win your regular season games, but can he step up in the big moments? The thing I just can't get past is, yes, do I believe he could have his best season of his career? Absolutely. Do I think it's a huge benefit to have a coach that's on his side, a coach that was a former quarterback, also a coach that's worked with him before? Yeah, I think that's huge for him. His supporting cast is outstanding. The offensive line has improved. He's got all this stuff going for him. I can't get past, the MVP is typically a popularity vote as well. Like you get Aaron Rodgers, who's won it back-to-back years. I'm not saying he didn't deserve it, but you could have given it to multiple guys, I think, the last couple of years. Mahomes is going to be in the mix. Josh Allen's going to be in the mix. You already mentioned Burrow. I think Herbert could be in the mix as well. You got all these young stud quarterbacks that are just, in terms of popularity, are way higher than Kirk Cousins is. So that's where it's, hard for me to see past that, because it's like, are all these people that vote on the MVP really going to pick Kirk Cousins out of a crowd that includes all those young studs that are also going to the playoffs? And because, if you go by definition, if Kirk Cousins has his best season ever and the Vikings finally have a 12-win season, finally win the division, that's pretty deserving of it, I'd say. But if Herbert has better stats and his team is also one of the top seeds in the AFC, I feel like for sure they'd give it to him. So, by definition, is he an MVP candidate? I think he is, but can I actually see him winning the award? I don't think so, just given the popularity nature of the whole thing.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the only pathway or reality of it to him theoretically winning this award is basically how Matt Ryan did it 6 years ago when he won in
Yeah.
2016. And to do that, the Falcons had to be one of the top teams in the league. And then they also went to the Super Bowl, which helps. Like, I know, it's a regular season award and this and that, but it's like these people make these votes once the playoffs are going on. It's like you
Hmm.
can't help but be like swayed by that even subconsciously. So like they went all the way
Right.
to the Super Bowl and they should have won that Super Bowl, everybody remembers. But so it's like that's the only kind of imagination or idea that I have towards him winning an MVP. It's like Matt Ryan had Kyle Shanahan that year, and that's what propelled Shanahan into a head coaching job. And then you
Hmm.
kind of think maybe the same thing with Kevin O'Connell now being the up and coming play caller that you assume he'll be. So that could also prop Kirk up a little bit more than really as much as possible as one could. And
Hmm.
realistically speaking, too, I think I like the point you brought up about the O line. There's gonna be a lot of continuity on the offense as far as the players he's out there with, and then the
Hmm.
offensive line should be better than it's ever been for him. Albeit, still there's a huge red flag at center. I think that
Yes.
could derail the whole thing, and that's kind of frustrating. That's kind of another topic of conversation. But I would also say with Kirk too, it's just like I think it all MVP boils down to just team success. I can keep going back to that really, where like you said, if we win the division, we win 12 games. I think he's very much in the conversation. But like
Hmm.
I almost think we have to take it up to another level. We're probably a top 1 or 2 team in the NFC, and it's like he's just undeniable. Where it's like you can't possibly look past him. Like if he has like a 5,000 yard season or
Right.
something, which I would say that I would say that's in the realm of possibility if we're going to throw the ball as much as I think we will this year, and especially with the extra game added on, like I
Hmm.
think Kirk is capable of that, and then in turn, like Justin Jefferson is definitely going to help the cause there, and
Yes.
he's just a monster, and like he's a top 3 receiver in the league right now. I would argue he's the best one, but
Hmm.
like even Vikings bias aside, but really there's a lot of factors at work here or in Kirk's favor, really, and I think this is kind of the ultimate perfect storm that we've talked about ever since he got here, really, as far as putting all the ingredients in place for Kirk to succeed. I know we've always
Yes.
talked about how that's basically the only way Kirk works at like an extreme level as far as like winning more than like 10 games or something. Is probably if all the pieces fall into place where you have this ideal coaching staff that likes him and will work well with him, plus all the skill position talent that he has around him, and then just
Hmm.
an offensive line that's getting better. Like it has all the makings of it. So let's see if it looks good, like on the field as it does on paper.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we've talked about this year after year. It's now year 5 of Kirk Cousins being here, which is insane to think about. But
I can't
I
believe
mean,
how much time has passed.
I know it's crazy, but he still needs to prove it. I mean, he did win the big playoff game against the Saints, but it's like, other than
That's it.
that, what's he really done? It's largely been a disappointment since he's been here. You know, whether it's his fault or Mike Zimmer's fault or Spielman's fault for horrible drafting, the blame could go all sorts of different ways. But the fact of the matter is, Kirk Cousins hasn't been good enough to overcome the shortcomings that Zimmer had and Spielman had and some of these other players have had. So, I mean, it's time for him to kind of, put up or shut up. He's 34 years old, going on 35, and he doesn't have that many years left, especially with the Vikings. I would imagine, and I would think this, front office is forward thinking enough that they're starting to have a plan for potentially replacing him, whether it's a year or two down the road. But um, any other final thoughts from you on this interesting discussion about Kirk Cousins being an MVP?
Man, I don't know. I just like you said. I think we're in agreement here, where it's just hard for me for being as down on Kirk as I am, and I feel like
Right.
really rightfully so, based off these last 4 seasons and only having one playoff win. I get wasn't the most ideal circumstances for him, but it's like at some point you just got to make it work and overcome things. He's just never really done that, and that's why I can't see that happening because MVPs like and like these guys are in their peaks or at their absolute peaks where they have to overcome things at some point or
Yep.
in some fashion or another. So it's like, man, I just have a hard time picturing that with Kirk, but he could prove me wrong too, and I'll eat my words. If he's really an MVP, then the Vikings are definitely going places, and I'm gonna
Yep.
feel pretty good about that. But yeah, I have a hard time picturing it right now.
I mean, I'll gladly take it because, I mean, we saw Adrian Peterson win an MVP, but we haven't seen a Vikings quarterback in our lifetime really. You could argue Favre, I guess, for that 1 year, but
Yeah.
a quarterback play at an MVP type level. So it'll be interesting to see if O'Connell can get that kind of play out of Kirk Cousins. If there is another level there, which I don't know for a 34-year-old quarterback, but I'm hoping there is because, like you said, that means the Vikings are probably going places if Kirk Cousins is playing that well. So it'll be interesting to keep an eye on, and I'm sure there will be plenty of Kirk Cousins discussion coming forward here as the season gets rolling. So
Yeah.
that will do it for this edition of the North Star Takes podcast. Like I mentioned earlier, please click the like button on this video and subscribe to our channel and help spread the word about our Minnesota sports conversations. And feel free to give us a follow on both Twitter and Instagram, and let us know your thoughts in the comments section below. What do you think about the Kirk Cousins MVP chatter? Do you think there's actually a legitimate shot of that happening? Or do you think it's all just kind of preseason hype and it'll be the same old Kirk Cousins this year? So let us know your thoughts below. And until next time, thanks for watching.